Hello, hello. You are listening to The Long Game, and I'm your host, David Lee Khim, co-founder of Omniscient Digital. In this episode, we chat with Britney Muller. Britney is on a mission to make AI accessible to everyone, no tech degree required. She's a former Moz senior SEO scientist and Hugging Face marketing manager who quarterbacked the launch of their LLM, Bloom. Britney hopes to turn complex tech into practical tools that you can actually use through her Actionable AI for Marketers course, and Britney empowers professionals to cut through the AI hype and implement strategies that deliver real results. She does this through her course called Actionable AI for Marketers and through her keynotes around the world. When she's not helping others level up their AI game, she's diving deeper into data science herself. In this conversation, we talk about all things AI, including AI education and accessibility, and how it can be applied in our day-to-days as marketers. She shares how brand mentions are becoming more important than backlinks, real use cases of AI beyond writing content, and why AI agents are bullshit. I think you're going to learn a lot. Here's my conversation with Britney Muller.
How's it going?
Hey, Britney. We made it work. It is happening.
I know. This is crazy.
Well,
I'm excited.
One question before we jump in. What would make this a win for you? Like, is there anything you would love to geek out about or anything top of mind that you want to talk about?
Oh, that's such a good question. It would be a win to leave listeners feeling excited about this technology and it's more accessible to them than they might currently think. Because I think there's even the more technical audiences that you and I kind of involve ourselves with on social. I still see so many people just hesitating to get their toes wet, right? To start exploring some of this tech. And so I don't know. I always feel like it's so important to encourage and support people's growth in these different areas. And there's no better time than now to explore and keep learning about this stuff. And if they're listening to your podcast on this, they're likely already in that mindset, but just to kind of give them that extra little, you can do this, you told them about this.
I mean, I myself needed that push and I consider myself more technical than the average person. And your course helped a lot with that, but we'll definitely get into that.
Awesome.
All right.
I love it.
Awesome. Britney, welcome to the show. I'm glad we finally made this happen.
So excited.
Fortunately, no Wi-Fi issues this time around. So it should go great.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, you mentioned, you shared some information ahead of the call, and you mentioned you have a snake named Pumpkin.
Yes.
So where does your snake hang out? Is it in the same room as you, or?
It's funny. We've been talking about moving him up to my office because he's not in a great spot right now. He's sort of in the entryway. It's sort of this library area of our home. But he's so funny. He's the best. So he's usually just hanging out in his living space over there. He did get out recently and got lost behind a cabinet. And would not come out. I could not get him out. And so I set up this little entrapment for him where I put a feeding pad out in a dead rat. And then I put a bunch of crinkled paper. And then I went to sleep on the couch. And just as I was falling asleep, I could hear him crinkling the paper. I'm like, you little brat. I gotcha. But he's so sweet. He's literally just this big, chubby, sweet snake that is my buddy. I love him so much.
It sounds like that wasn't your first time having to deal with that situation before.
No. Yeah. He's done it a couple times. They're real sneaky, but he's so sweet.
That's amazing. Yeah. I don't meet many people with snakes. I had to learn to get used to them. I had a friend who had a pet snake and I'm like, well, if I'm going to hang out with you at your house, I got to get used to this snake. It's like people who maybe aren't around kids very often and they don't know how to interact with kids. That's how I am with snakes. I'm like, how do I interact with you? Do you like being pet? Should I hold you?
Yeah. How does this work? That's so funny.
All right. Well, I know we're not here to talk about your snake. We want to talk a little bit about some AI and some SEO, some marketing. I I did prep for our conversation, as you know, and listened to a ton of your interviews and got to go through a lot of your history. I knew of you when you were at Moz. So my background's in SEO. That's kind of what I know you mostly for, and like in the
Yeah.
SEO world. And now you've kind of expanded beyond those horizons. So I'd love for you to share with the listeners here, like, how would you describe what you're focused on now? Like, I know you have your course, maybe you can share a bit about that, but what do you consider your profession to be now? Because you seem like you've expanded a lot more.
Yeah. It's funny. I feel as though I have expanded a bit more, but I'm getting a lot more focused
Mm-hmm.
on what my mission is. And it's really about empowering others through AI education. And I do that through, my online course, Actionable AI for Marketers, but also different workshops and public speaking events. It's really fun to shed some light on this technology and make it accessible in a way that really, it's not being done in other places. Essentially formatting this in actionable ways and distilling down what AI is really qualified to accomplish and what it's not so great at. And then oftentimes, and as you saw, like within the course, it takes on a little bit of a life of its own because students like yourself or other professionals come up with these brilliant ideas
Mm-hmm.
that take this technology to the next level. And I think that's where us as an industry and within marketing and SEO, that's where this really starts to take off.
Yeah. Yeah. You just mentioned your Actionable AI for Marketers course, which I saw you share it on LinkedIn, and I kid you not, I just clicked on it and I went to the Maven page and I just what do you enroll? I enrolled
Yeah.
immediately. I kind of read
Yeah.
the page description, but I'm like, okay, Brittany's doing a course on this. I'm definitely going to learn something. So I'm just letting you know that there was no consideration of whether or not I should take it. It was just a clear yes. But maybe for
Oh,
folks who aren't as familiar, maybe could you share a bit about the course,
yeah.
the purpose of it, what you go through?
Yeah. It's a really fun and sort of learning intense 2 weeks where we have 4 different live sessions that are 90 minutes each. And then there's 2 different live office hours. And it's a really fun and learning environment where you're connecting with the other students in the class through breakout sessions, through different assignments. And it takes you through this really common machine learning or AI workflow where, we really start with the problem, identifying what are the tasks that you do on a regular basis and identifying areas of opportunity that AI can assist you. And then we go into data, right? What sort of information or examples can we feed an AI system to support you with these tasks? And then we start to put these pieces together in class 3 and look at different workflows of AI solving very specific problems. And then the 4th class is all about how to automate different levels of this and how to connect those things in a way that, you're still going about it safely, but exploring some more efficient workflows.
Yeah, even we were talking about this earlier, but I like to think I'm pretty tech forward and maybe an early adopter. I have a product management background and like a growth background, so I can be pretty scrappy. But the reason I took your course was it still felt like I wasn't utilizing these tools as much as I possibly could, right? I was doing a lot of content creation. I started doing some data analysis and tagging, but you kind of took that, my understanding, a couple notches up, I think. And to some people, I think hearing that it's 90 minutes a week sounds like a lot. And I think it's worth it. And even if you can't apply it immediately, for me, it even just changed my framing of how to think about these tools, where not only do I have a better understanding, but I built more of that muscle
Yeah.
where, okay, AI should be the first thing I try to see if it can even do this thing, because I might surprise myself.
Right.
And then if it doesn't, great, I'm just going to go back to doing it how I was going to do it anyway. But I felt like that was a muscle a lot of us in the course were trying to build.
Oh, I love hearing that. That's amazing. And have you regularly baked it into different tasks and workflows that you do regularly?
It's a part of almost every workflow now. I use it when I'm like walking my dog and like I have a question, or I might be driving and my girlfriend and I are planning a trip.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, let's use Google Gemini to look at flight options because we don't have a laptop. And so we can tell it all the different criteria. So it's just kind of the default thing to go to now. And what was helpful was, I'll tell you I'm kind of like just promoting your course at this point, but I had this key moment where you shared the Google Colab notebooks and all of that. And I'm like, I don't know what any of this does, but I followed the instructions. I uploaded the data set and I ran the script. I'm like, oh my goodness, it's that easy.
Yeah.
And then I took a step back. I'm like, wait, I bet Britney also used AI to write these scripts. I'm like, wait, I could do that too. So there was a big unlock there.
Yes. Oh, I love hearing that. That's awesome. Yeah, it's more accessible than people think, and I think oftentimes it's just kind of getting that momentum and building your confidence a little bit of, I can navigate this, right? I can start to explore this in different ways than I have previously through the support of AI, through the support of these different resources.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm really curious going into kind of that transition a little bit, because if I understand correctly, you've been going deep into machine learning and AI and LLMs back in like 2019, before a lot of this hype occurred. So what did you see at the time that made you decide to go all in on this? And
so this is going to maybe blow your mind. I have been obsessed with machine learning ever since 2014. I took Harvard's CS 109 data science course, and it literally changed the trajectory of my career. I mean, I watched these videos. It was night classes every Tuesday and Thursday. I watched it like it was my favorite sitcom on steroids. Like I obsessed over it. I couldn't wait to get home to catch it live and like to engage in the chat. And I know I wasn't even supposed to be in there because at that time they hadn't publicly released, access to the course. But in 2014, I found it through GitHub. And the reason why this is such a funny story of how I got into it, back in 2012, I read the Harvard Business Review article saying that data scientist is going to be the sexiest job of the 21st century. And I don't know why, that's such a silly title and such a silly concept. It stuck in my brain. It planted roots in my head because I had heard people in my co-working space talk about it. And I was always interested in programming and this and that. And it just started to make sense. Of course, it would have something to do with data analysis and data science and blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't until years later that marinated, and I was bored in my apartment in Denver one night, and I just decided to go to the most technically advanced place I knew of, which was GitHub, and search data science, which is so weird. And I can't remember exactly if I searched data science course or what, or how I found this CS 109 data science class from Harvard, but it literally changed my life. I knew it a couple classes in, I knew this was it. I knew this is where the future was going. I was so confident and so certain that I just started going all in on this stuff. And it wasn't until years later that I had the confidence to talk more publicly about it.
Yeah.
Because who was I, kind of self-taught, late at night weirdo obsessing over this information. I was spinning up clusters and getting kicked off AWS and doing it, but I wasn't I still had so much to learn. And then at Moz, it was such a beautiful space and environment where they gave me the freedom and the flexibility to explore this deeper and I would come up with different applications for us, within internally, to use machine learning in different ways, both silly and actually valuable solutions. And they supported it, so major kudos to my team and everyone at Moz that was so supportive and you should talk more about this. Let's, you can integrate this into one of your upcoming talks. And so I think the earliest I spoke about it on stage was in Utah at this mastermind conference in 2017. That was the first time I
wow.
was able to go on stage and be like, this is it. And then I had conference organizers be like, can you please not talk about machine learning?
Can you dial it back a little?
Yeah, they're like, can you just talk about featured snippets? And I would be like, oh, this is it. This is the future. You're missing out, but whatever.
Wait, so I'm embarrassed I didn't know this, but for that talk, like what were you talking about as it related? Because it sounds like it was an SEO conference if they're like, can you talk about featured snippets? So what applications were you talking about back then?
Oh my God. Honestly, it was like kind of dumb. I was, this is so embarrassing, David. I remember I thought marketers would need to know how like the training mechanism worked, because I was so fascinated by the data behind the training. I'm like, oh yeah, you need to, have a big data set, take 20% off, save it for testing, train the model to recognize all the patterns and this and that. And then it predicts things. And then you take this and even today, it's like marketers don't need to know that, or they're not going to, they're not.
I don't think they're going to go learn it.
So I was a little off base in terms of like how I thought we were going to be using the technology at the time, because it did require the technical know-how. You couldn't, at that time, you had to be spinning up these models and doing those things to play with it and to test it. And so I sort of naively thought like, oh, I'll just teach marketers about how I've built these different things and what it will do in the future and get people excited. And I feel like I probably confused people a lot, and I also had a very like narrow, shallow, limited view of thought leaders in the space. When you first come into this, it's very easy to fall for different scientist narrative like Bostrom. I think I had like recommended his super intelligence book, and that's like one of my biggest speaking regrets, because his science is so bent and twisted, and it's only been since like learning deeper history of science and this field I'm able to like, okay, I have a much more balanced an actionable oriented view of how to deliver this information in like a much safer, clean, simpler way.
Yeah, that was a passive jab right there. It was you're regretting recommending the book.
Oh my gosh,
that's probably a warning for folks.
Deeply, and I've talked about this very publicly, so it's not like it was like every week or 2 weeks I would get DMs about Nick Bostrom in general and his book Super Intelligence, and I begged people not to purchase it. And then I was having so many of these private conversations that I was very comfortable to go forward publicly and just say why I believe he's such a horrible, dangerous person. And unfortunately, there's a lot of that in the scientific community that is not common knowledge unless you start learning about the history of like even things like IQ and where that came from. And there's just some really dark past that lives within the science world, unfortunately.
Yeah, I recognized in even past interviews, you kind of broach some of these more, I would consider them sensitive topics, but I think by nature of you being independent, you can just be like, hey, this is not good, which must be very empowering.
Yeah, it feels so good. It feels healing.
Yeah, like I can't imagine someone working at OpenAI would say these types of things.
Right.
But I am not familiar with this book. I just looked it up right now. Could you give like a quick synopsis of like, I guess, what it is about and kind of why you don't recommend it?
Yeah, it's just a load of BS, to be totally frank. It's like, it is AI hype on steroids and all about like, we're going to live through this technology at the expense of like, murdering or blowing up lots of people. Like he has a total lack of compassion for human life, like quite frankly, and has very publicly said horrific things about African Americans and different minority groups, and just all around awful person, in my opinion, in my personal value system. But more importantly, the way that he delivers this information, that is truly so terrifying. It's under the guise of altruism. And that's how a lot of these people do that. But you really have to learn a little bit more about the history and where they're coming from, like transhumanism, and these like AI lifer people. No one describes this better than Timnit Gebru. She has a test grill video that I feel should be mandatory watching for anyone even talking about this space, because she so eloquently describes what I'm trying to get at in terms of why it's so dangerous, how manipulative it is in like terms of recruiting and getting people excited about this technology, incredibly misleading and all around just like scary. There's like a dark energy about it that I want nothing to do with. And I would love to shed more light on why that's so incredibly problematic. And yeah, again, I wish I was as good as talking about this as Timnit Gebru. She has packaged it up so beautifully with the Test Girl acronym, which she came up with, her and her team. And it really does touch on every aspect of these sort of dangerous groups within AI that, again, all fall under this guise of altruism and doing good for maximum number of people in the world.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Even reading the synopsis of the book on Amazon, I can see it going down a dark path of kind of AI maximalism. And I can understand why some might buy into the hype of these things. And I mean, I've spoken to a lot of people about AI and AI in business and marketing, and they see that it's a lot of hype. Like on LinkedIn, people are always talking about the future of business, the future of SEO, the future of whatever with AI. And one of the things that was very refreshing about you is you talk about like, hey, here's how to actually use it. We're not philosophizing about the future. Granted, I think there's a lot of value in understanding like the history and what it means for kind of how we work and how we function in the future.
Yeah.
One of the things that seem to be the hype cycle right now is AI agents. There was an interview you did where you're like, hey, well, you said AI agents are bullshit.
Yeah.
Please tell me more about that. Because at this point, I don't think anyone knows what it means anymore.
No one knows what it means. It's not like that song. Yeah. Oh my gosh. AI agents. It's literally just like the latest marketing AI jargon hype word. It describes nothing. It literally is such a vague, nothing word that we are slapping onto all of these tools or topics or conversations. It describes nothing. And also the fact that we can, automate some of these systems to complete tasks or do different things. That technology has existed for a very, very long time. Part of it is nothing new. It's just sort of been like the latest and greatest, AI, agentic AI hype conversation to get people kind of reinvigorated and interested in AI. It's also like PR genius, right? The PR methodology behind some of this AI hype blows my mind because it's constantly just feeding itself through these sparkly new words and concepts that we feel compelled to learn about or apply. And when you get down to the brass tacks, Meredith Whittaker describes this really brilliantly at South by Southwest, where, people that want to talk about and use AI agents haven't even sat down and like thought through what that means, right? Think about like, okay, maybe you want to book concert tickets for 5 of your friends and then automatically text them that it's been purchased. In order to do that, an AI agent needs to have access to your credit card information. And the way that we communicate with, LLMs and AI today, it's through these sources of, passing information back and forth. So we're now taking your credit card information, passing it over these, potentially unsecure frameworks and having it do something with that. And then in order to text your friends, we now need full read-write access to your messaging application.
Yeah.
We just haven't thought through what the implications of this are, how dangerous that could potentially be from a security standpoint, from reputational standpoint. What happens when these things go wrong? Can we undo some of that, right? Like we just haven't thought through all of these things. And for what? For a quick little automation task that, again, can be done through previous, technology that we've created. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me to give AI and LLMs these powers to complete different tasks. It's super naive. And I think people, to be really, really honest with you, when I see it on different websites or businesses are saying AI agent, this and that, my brain immediately goes to, oh, you don't really have like a strong, clear direction for your product.
Mm-hmm.
You don't, right? Like you're jumping on the latest trend. That's not a business strategy that will support you long term. This is very trending. And then oftentimes, it's not supported by actual agentic capabilities either.
Yeah. I remember when OpenAI released Operator, I was thinking, all right, I should try this out. I should see what it's all about. It's been a couple months. I'm curious if it got better, but I remember, okay, basic use case that I think Dave demoed is book a restaurant.
Yeah.
So I just said, hey, find a restaurant for a date night with my girlfriend on this date at these times in this area. And it was cool to see kind of it open up the proxy browser and do all the things on its own. But it got to a point where I said, okay, book it. And it said, this requires a credit card to hold your spot. I'm like, I'm not putting this to this proxy browser. I don't know what it's going to do with information. And I tried to do another thing where it asked me to log into my Google Workspace. I'm like, I'm not putting my login credentials into this.
Yeah.
And I just figured maybe I'm just being too risk averse or fearful, but that didn't seem like the right thing to do. Like I didn't want to expose myself to that sort of risk.
Yeah.
So I am curious, as these tools are like, I think I saw Manus came out. That's been kind of part of the recent hype cycle of people using that tool to automate a bunch of things. And whenever I see AI agent on a website, I always ask, like, what does that mean? What does it do? Because typically if you have a tool, which an agent is just another tool, typically you have a use case for that tool.
Yes.
And I think that's probably a challenge with, or probably why people need a course like yours to understand how to use these other LLM, like chat-based platforms. Like, what do I use this for? Like, it's a general purpose thing, but I don't know how to apply it. And I'm feeling the same thing for agents right now, where I'm wondering if maybe I just need to go into a cave and spend a couple hours figuring out if there's anything to it, or maybe I'm just using it wrong or something.
Yeah, it's interesting. And hearing you describe it like that too, kind of reminded me of like when ChatGPT first came out and there were all these kind of AI prompt wrappers that people were trying to sell you of the SEO AI. And it's really just a GPT prompt, behind the scene that did it a little bit better. But same thing with the people that are selling these super vague agent solutions. And something we touched on in class is it would be way more advantageous for you to go somewhere that can automate super specific things that you want it to do, right? Through a more safe mechanism, whether that be through Zaps on Zapier that, are pulling different information from LinkedIn or your inbox and doing something super specific to your work, to your tasks. I think solving your own specific use cases, it's so exciting and so invigorating. And oftentimes, you can't find that in these offering solutions of AI agents or even AI technology. It needs to be kind of custom tailored to what it is that you're working on. And a lot of this stuff is way more accessible than people think it is. And so it's fun to sort of introduce students and people to some of this technology to explore those capabilities on their own in a safer way.
Yeah, one of the tools that I use, I'm finding there are a lot of kind of new generation of Zapier tools with LLM steps embedded into them and maybe a different interface, but there's one called Lindy that I've been using.
Yes.
Um, and it's very similar to Zapier, but you can have like an LLM step. So one example that I use it for is, hey, whenever a client sends like access to analytics or something,
Yeah.
ping someone in Slack that they now have access. Trying to build that in Zapier is surprisingly pretty complicated.
Yeah.
But now I just use an LLM prompt that says, hey, if this is giving access to any sort of tool, regardless of what the tool is, ping this Slack channel. Whereas before I would have had to have filters for different email domains and different, like every single platform we might have gotten an invite to.
Yeah.
So that saved a lot of time. So now like we actually don't miss any of these invites anymore. Simple use case, but I was like, hey, did you know we have access to we already have access? And people were like, oh, I missed that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love specific applications like that. That's so powerful.
Yeah. It's so simple and it feels silly to share that one, but I'm like, yeah, we now know when we have access. Whereas before we jump on a call, we missed a notification at some point and we asked for access and the client's like, you already have access. It's just a silly moment, right? Like we didn't need to make that mistake.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that.
So I want to pivot a little to like AI and marketing and SEO. Maybe this is related to a little bit of the hype conversation, but SEO seems like your foundation for marketing. You worked at Moz for a while, and that seems to be kind of where you started thinking about how to apply this technology. I'm curious to get your broad take. Like, what's your take on like, people are calling it different things like generative engine optimization, answer engine optimization, or like just the concept of optimizing to appear in these LLM outputs. Like, how do you think about that, if at all, and whether or not it's different from like foundational SEO?
Yeah, that's such a good question and something I'm seeing a lot of because there has been, not a whole lot of parity on how are we talking about this? What are we calling it? I remember, I think 2 years ago, I pitched AIO, right? Like optimizing for AI, because it is quite different than optimizing for search engines, but the two will continue to go hand in hand based on the way that they are now connected to the search landscape. But optimizing for large language models in and of itself is pretty different. It really is more of a popularity contest in terms of mentions versus backlinks. The more and more instances a language model sees your name associated with world-class marketing expert, it's way more likely to provide your name, some of your information when people are asking and querying, world-class SEO expert or marketing expert. And so it's interesting because I like to use my example a little bit because I've sort of shot myself in the foot a little bit with this technology because I do and have done so many talks and podcasts, and I've never been super consistent about like my bio or this or that. And if I had really kind of stuck to this one thing, or, I used to always say, and I love like standing at the intersection of AI and marketing, like, would that have helped support me being surfaced more in AI? Probably, right? Being a little bit more savvy on how might people be searching for individuals in this space, and how can I kind of clean up my tagline or biography and be consistent across those mentions on the internet. Because with AI optimization or LLMs, brand mentions are the new backlinks, and they will continue to be so. And so the more and more you can sort of flex those muscles of being mentioned in the appropriate places online that are talking about your services, your product offerings, the better your odds are at showing up in some of those LLM AI outputs.
So it's interesting to hear you say, it sounds like there's a difference between brand mentions and backlinks. Is it that, hey, you can get mentioned and even if you don't get a backlink, it's still valuable?
Yes.
It's interesting. As I hear that, I think, it went from, there's sort of been an evolution in link building where it was like link building, which it kind of needs to get rebranded into like digital PR.
Yeah.
And now it's almost like brand mentions is kind of the next evolution where, yes, backlinks are part of that, but you don't need a backlink for it to be valuable.
Yeah, exactly. And it really is more similar to PR, right? It is getting those high quality mentions in relevant places online. But what's different and interesting about LLMs that I don't think we talk about enough is the fact that, these are word predicting machines. And so they have a giant, context knowledge graph of the most likely set of next words to produce in the output. And granted, they have a little bit of randomness in there, so it'll sprinkle and get creative a bit. But if you, if you have the most mentions alongside the context in which people are searching, your probability of showing up increases exponentially than, if you had very little mentions or information online.
Yeah. So this question comes up all the time when I speak to potential clients, when I speak to any just peers in SEO, and they're like, yeah, how are you optimizing for this? It sounds like one way is to get more brand mentions, but how would you typically answer that question?
Yeah, I think I would kind of look at this through kind of a two-pronged approach. And one is really figuring out, where does your current audience exist and live online? Where are they having some of these conversations? Where are they asking some of the questions as it pertains to your product or service? And how can you start to tap into that data to get some insights around that? I love the Reddit API for stuff like this. That's been really fun to pull different insights for different clients interested in expanding their sort of mentions online and, increasing performance in AI or LLMs. It really, and I want to be careful. I always want to be careful about how I phrase this, because unfortunately it is gameable, right? This is like kind of the wild, wild west of the SEO days, where you could do a bunch of like black hatty things or get just like tons of random mentions on different websites. You obviously don't want to do that, because at some point there will be, a cleanup method of that spam, or, the quality of the outputs not being so good. And so I would really highly, highly recommend investing in like forums and communities. I would recommend investing in PR, and using AI to kind of free up your different resources and team members to be doing a little bit more of that online. And the biggest hack of all is to empower your current customers in ways where they do it for you. And we see some of the best brands in the world get really clever at finding ways to run different campaigns or do different things where the people that love them the most do their marketing for them, right? They kind of take it to the next level. And that is also where you can kind of really take off when it comes to this.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I have heard of people doing some black hat things, or like maybe gray or black hat things with Reddit, and like buying accounts with Karma and, starting to promote their companies or creating fake accounts and things like that. But it sounds like you have heard of scenarios where people have done this kind of in a way that's above board. Could you share some examples, maybe anonymizing the company, but sharing kind of how they're approaching forums and communities and Reddit?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there is a high value placed on forums and communities right now, because they accomplish a couple things that AI will never touch, which is unique human opinions and stories and experiences that, again, an AI output a language model has no bearing in the real world. It's a little bit more like an alien in an alternate reality that doesn't even know what gravity is, has no idea of light or objects, and has just read all of Earth's like text, right? So right away, we're assuming that all information is text-based, which we know that's not true either. But that's a very limited view of the world in which we live in today. And there's all this incredible research around how 1-year-old and like younger babies are so much more intelligent than the latest LLM models, because they have, conceptual awareness. They have better reasoning skills. They understand, if I drop an object, this happens. They have a richer understanding of the real world. And so, companies like Google and OpenAI, they understand that their models are basically generating the average output of everything they've ever consumed in the world. And in order to up that value, they know that they can integrate sites like Reddit and unique information and quotes and stories, and that will humanize the context, and it will also give a level of, expertise and authority to information that is otherwise quite bland and just AI generated. And so there is this premium on the forum content, but you're exactly right. People now see like that, was it 60 million a year deal that Google is doing with Reddit, and they're investing heavily in the platform. They're, to your point, like they're hiring bots to do this and that. And mods are so strapped in their resources and time to catch some of these things. And each subreddit behaves totally differently. There's different rules and guidelines. And so you certainly don't want to gamify the platform. But to do it in a way that, enriches the space, is actually adding value to people and being creative about it. I also think I see so much happening in the comments section of social media. That's where everything is these days. It's not even so much in like the content itself, but people are living in the comments, and we're so hungry for community that's where we're connecting with people and exchanging ideas. And then like, this was my thought, or did you catch this? And I see brands doing some of that really, really well when they're doing it in like a positive way that's influencing people, and not being like nefarious or, doing the bot activity that honestly I think is detrimental to brand. It's detrimental to reputation. It's lazy. People pick up on that. Your audience isn't dumb, and so to level up that strategy and having a human in the loop and coming up with some really, thoughtful engagement strategies will take it to the next level.
Yeah. One of the interesting kind of behavior changes I found is I was one of those people that would type a Google search and add Reddit at the end.
Me too.
Now even when I'm doing research on like whether it's ChatGPT or Perplexity or something, I'll ask about like this product versus this product. And then I'll ask, what do Redditors say? Like very explicitly still.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah. I'm the same. I love Reddit. I think Reddit is amazing. That's so funny. But see, that speaks to like, you appreciate those aspects of information and the fact that, there's all these unique opinions and conversations happening there.
Well, the weird thing is I used to not be on Reddit at all. And then in the last couple of years, I started lurking and finding more helpful information. And now I created an account and I'm a logged in user now. Yeah. And I was joking with my girlfriend the other day. I was like, hey, I'm no longer just a lurker. I'm posting on Reddit now. So it's interesting. Like you were talking about people live in the comments. I'm like, I love the comments on Reddit. People are so funny and they catch really interesting things and they're very intelligent. I'm like, I'm actually learning a lot. Yeah. I mean, you have to be careful not to go down certain rabbit holes, but it's very curated. So I really enjoy that aspect. And there was a case where I was doing research on some products and GPT spat out like certain phrases. I went to Reddit and I'm like, oh, wait, a lot of these comments are saying almost the same thing that GPT said. So when I started wondering, like, are these people gaming this?
Yeah.
I have to allow myself the illusion that people aren't gaming it. But I do fear, at some point, if people do with these systems, people will game it for their benefit, that hopefully the Reddit quality doesn't go down, because I'm enjoying it right now. But I can see a world where, bots take over and people start trying to be too promotional on there.
Totally. And you do notice like the LLMs speak Reddit. Like early on, we noticed that you could just type in bro if you didn't like the output, if you thought it wasn't good enough. And then it would be like, oh, sorry, here's a different, because it's seen it in Reddit. And a funny, like something that I wish was more like published and we could cite sources on, but is well talked about in the AI industry, is what really leveled up the early GPT versions was training on Reddit. It made it the Q&A, and specifically explain it like I'm 5, or that subreddit. People single-handedly give that subreddit credit to making early GPT models conversational and better at simply explaining things to users, because it was mirroring and learning from that.
Like that's not just conjecture. Like people have confirmed that, hey, this interesting.
It's talked about a lot at conferences. Like there's been entire talks on it. It's funny, I've looked this up a couple of times and there's not like big research papers on it, or people haven't published on different platforms. I'm sure we could find something, but I've attended a couple lectures about this specifically, and it always blew my mind. I was like, yeah, of course. It makes sense, but so interesting.
I was asking about SEO before, and I just remembered you had this almost a throwaway comment in another interview, but you were saying it's kind of like a prime era for technical SEOs to do really well during all of this. So what did you mean by that? Like what is it about that skill set that is perfect for this?
It really, really is, for a couple of reasons. I think first and foremost, SEOs that have experience and know how to optimize content for search, that will continue to be valued throughout this next wave of AI search, AI generation, because we know that there are all of these limitations with large language models, right? They aren't able to search, outside of connecting to a search engine, real-time events, local information, this and that, all of these things that Google search or Bing search supplements and really supports a higher quality output. And so if you're able to come at this from a couple different directions, one being having content that is indexed within these search engines that can be surfaced and supportive of the AI technology itself, but then also the fact that you have some technical chops already, you are literally in a prime position to leverage these tools in way more powerful ways than the average person. Mm-hmm. You are now able to automate different workflows. I feel like Everett is such a great example of an SEO who was a little bit technical, and he knew that he wanted to use AI to automate and find internal linking opportunities. And so after learning about vector embeddings, he's now developed this entire workflow from Screaming Frog exports that automatically surfaces, hey, here's all the target URLs on the website, and here's the linking opportunities for each of those based on this clustering algorithm that automatically groups together similar pages. And I mean, it's just like brilliant stuff like that. You're able to, and to your earlier point, like with the getting access to Google Analytics and different accounts, like that is such a brilliant, hyper-specific use case for your team. And while that might take, a couple minutes every day to suss out if you were to do it yourself, that adds up. And to streamline some of these things to free you up to not have to manage or look through those things, we can continue to iterate and build on that. And I think technical SEOs are literally in the perfect position to do this and to do it well. And if you've ever been curious about integrating some of this technology into your workflows, you have no excuse anymore, because Claude's one of my favorite LLMs, but Claude's sonnet models are some of the best coding, programming, support teachers in the world right now. They have been trained on all of this code and programs online, and it can easily help you create a collab notebook to do something really, really specific.
Yeah.
To use something like the SERP API and pull Google News results for the last month and surface the pros and cons of companies and competitors in your space. I mean, you can set your workflows and your marketing on fire with this technology. You just need to know like where to get started and where to start playing with it.
Yeah, you kind of segueing for me here, but I'm curious. You mentioned one use case that Everett built out, which I finished building out the workflow he shared of identifying the link opportunities. And I was like, okay, now how do I make it recommend anchor text and then like automatically add the links, which I didn't get to that step yet. What are other use cases that you've seen other folks build out, maybe through your course or through the consulting that you do, that you found that that you thought was interesting, or like, oh wow, that's a very smart use case or interesting use case?
Yeah. Oh gosh, there's a lot. Okay. So I love this last cohort. We had an individual share how he had set up a project within Claude where he had uploaded Marie Haynes' EEAT guide, and they had used that exclusively to optimize different on-site content to improve for expertise, authority, trust, and it had performed incredibly. Like it gave him and his team all these great ideas to add unique, opinions here, or let's find sources for this. And that I thought was such a brilliant use case. I also love the idea of, and we did this within Google Scripts. I don't think you were in this cohort. Let me know if I'm wrong, but there was a student who really wanted to be able to pull the latest published YouTube video on their channel and automatically generate a e-blast, a social post, and like pull information from that. And the YouTube APIs are a little clunky and the captions API sucks. Like they're really hard to work with, but I figured out a way to grab the title and the description. And granted, these had some, great information, but that alone was perfect prompt fodder to create a powerful LinkedIn post, a powerful Twitter, or X posts, et cetera. And so that kind of just speeds up your workflow. I don't believe that student would ever like set and forget that. But now her team is able to have all these drafts of potential e-blasts and social posts to work from versus looking at a blank screen. And I think that is really where we start to level up as marketers and SEOs. Another one that comes to mind is, and WordCrafter has done this beautifully, but you can also do this in a collab notebook if you wanted to, is to pull the search results for a keyword that you're trying to rank for, closely evaluate what are the topics that all these pages cover? What are the common questions and answers? I've set up a number of these scripts for clients and different content teams. WordCrafter.ai automates this whole thing and has better capabilities than if you were to just put it together yourself. But that's a brilliant application of, the best SEOs in the world take a very close look at how Google is curating and surfacing that content, because they know majority of searchers seeking X desire this and in this format. And so if we're able to sort of evaluate that and then identify opportunity gaps that no one's talked about or that we could include that would make our information even better, you're just setting yourself up for success. And so I think those are just a couple of the ways that I've seen teams and professionals really, really power up their efforts and their skill set through AI itself.
It's interesting because it reminds me of a use case that a friend shared with me, where he was saying, hey, you can take the Google search quality ratings guides that they give to the folks who are labeling the data and feed that into your LLM of choice, and then give it the article that you want to publish and like ask for it to score that piece of content and like how well is it optimized towards a search intent.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh wow, you're literally just getting the paper that talks about how the AI works and getting the AI to tell you what it'll label it as, which is fascinating. It's like very meta.
It's so meta, right? That is so funny. I love that one too.
One of the things that we do is I have a lot of experience writing, but sometimes, still get writer's block, don't really know what to write. And what we found helpful, or what I found helpful, is sometimes I'll just be on a walk and I have an idea of like a newsletter or podcast episode or something.
Yeah.
I just record myself, get the transcript, put that into like an automated workflow, and it spits out like 5 different LinkedIn posts, 5 different potential X posts, and like a potential newsletter. I'm like, wow, this took all my thoughts that, yes, I could have sat down and structured all of my thinking and everything. And part of me wonders if I should do that work and be more intentional there, but it helps me figure out how to structure it much more quickly. And you get a bunch of content that's based on actual ideas, rather than just saying, write me an article about X. It's actually based on your original thoughts.
It's so funny because I really struggle with organization. Like I struggle organizing my thoughts. I struggle, simplifying different things or having transitions in my content. And so AI helps me dramatically see those blind spots. Or I'm like, oh, duh. Like, why would I format it like this? It should be organized like this. Organizing, it's helped me so much. It's also, I have some funny anecdotes and like stories about ways I've used it, just kind of in weird specific scenarios. There was a company a couple years ago that owed me this refund. Okay. And for whatever reason, they were not giving it to me. And it was like very obvious that this should have taken place weeks ago. I had tried writing various requests and emails and my voice wasn't doing it. Right. And so what I decided to do was to take this information, feed it into ChatGPT and say, in a legalese voice, like act as if you are my attorney, which again, I probably at that point should have sent it to an attorney, but I'm trying to save money. I'm like, this is when ChatGPT first came out. I'm like, just reword this as if, you were my attorney and I, whatever, help me get this money essentially. And then this is so embarrassing. And then I CC'd this like fake law email address that I tested to make sure it didn't bounce. And so I had a fake lawyer like name on it and everything. And I got my money in 20 minutes, David. 20 minutes.
No way. Really?
Yes, I was sitting at dinner with my friends in Buffalo, New York, and I saw it come through and I screamed. I was like, this is why this technology needs to be in the hands of people that are like arguing medical bills, right? Or like trying to, get support for their families and like get different resources that are owed to them. It's like, this is what this technology is really good at. Like we need to make sure we're empowering people that, should have access to these things.
Yeah, that's amazing. I've used AI for similar use cases. Yeah. Not like legal, but for when I was trying to like get a refund or there was a policy that I thought was unfair. And I was like, how was I even supposed to know this existed? But it ended up helping kind of make a case. And like, I didn't get exactly what I wanted, but was able to get a little bit. Like I was happy with the outcome. But yeah, the fact you brought up, this should be a lot more available and accessible to everyone. Like, when you think about people who are fighting medical bills, or whenever I'm trying to choose insurance plans, I have to talk to my girlfriend because she's in like the biosciences. I'm like, can you help me pick these things? Like, she's just very well known about, like, understands the healthcare industry. I'm like, if I don't feel comfortable choosing a healthcare plan, I can only think about people who are even less comfortable or don't have the resources. I'm like, AI helps a lot with this, surprisingly, with just understanding the ramifications of these decisions.
Yeah, exactly.
I think you share this separately, but I think in some ways, would AI be like making us dumber because we don't have to put in that critical thinking?
I have talked about this a little bit recently. I do feel like it can definitely make us dumber and slower. Like a couple weeks ago, I started finding myself using AI to respond to like the silliest, minuscule emails that were coming into my inbox of like things I didn't even really care about. It was like, why am I going to AI when I could very simply, write a 1 to 2 sentence response to this? This is embarrassing. I am getting dumber. This is lazy and weird. And then funny enough, like when you do that, I caught myself doing it, and then it takes more time than if I were just, you know what I mean? So you start to like go too far on the AI front, and you're like, oh, wait a minute. I should not. And then the last couple of weeks, I've like used it very rarely, just to like make sure I'm like, my brain is still working. I can do this all myself, So, it is interesting. It's like, what's the end goal, right? Is it to just put our brains in a jar and not do anything for the rest of our life? I hope not. I hope that's not it. And I think we need to be having more conversations around, some of the ethics of this and the value systems that we hold around, why are we using this? And what are the reasons we should be using this? I see lots of different examples that kind of shine a light in the other direction of like AI writing eulogies, right? Or like your father of the bride.
I'm not surprised.
Right? There's something so heartbreaking about that, in my opinion. Or like, there's areas in my opinion that I don't think AI should necessarily cross into unless there's like odd use cases or whatever. But it's something to consider. My fiance is so funny because I remember it was a couple Valentine's days ago, and I like put all this information about him into ChatGPT, and I was like, write like a funny, cute poem about Paul, blah, blah, blah. It did a really good job, like so good. And then I wrote it out on a piece of paper, and I was so excited. And I'm, naive and new to some of this. And so I give it to him. He loves it. He absolutely loves it. It makes him like a little emotional. And then I had to tell him, I'm like, I used, Chat GPT to help me write this. And he's such a thoughtful person. It took him a little while to think about this. And he came back to me and he goes, I don't like that a technology made me like feel something like that.
Oh.
I'm not comfortable like feeling emotion from a technology, and I didn't know that was what was happening. And he was just like, please, like, don't do that again. Like, that didn't feel good to me, and don't do that. And I thought that was such like a great litmus test of some of these things of, where is it appropriate and where is it not? Like, what is it to be human, and how can we make sure that, we're connecting and freeing up our time and resources to be more human? That's a fun conversation with a lot of marketing and support teams I get to have let like Firefly's AI listen to your workshop and transcribe different things and follow up so that you can focus on being human and present with people, reading their body language, supporting them in ways that, only a human really can. And so it's important to consider those things.
Yeah, I remember a couple months ago, I was playing around with the Lindy tool that I told you about, and I had it automatically draft email responses in my voice. And as they came through, I was like, I don't want to respond to this now. I just have a bunch of drafts, and like, if it did have a draft, I would have to edit it anyway. I'm just like, this is kind of lazy and not thoughtful. Like, I want to put some thought into this. So I just turned that off. But you kind of took it to another level. I haven't heard of people using AI to write eulogies. I'm not too surprised, but that experience you just shared with your fiance around, like, sure, you were able to write something very beautiful, but was it really you? And there's like the human aspect of, a technology made me feel this way. That I honestly haven't thought about that too much. Mainly because I'm not going into that world yet. I've considered it. Like, I spoke to a friend, let's say a friend, and they joked about using AI to plan their proposal and all that stuff. And I'm like, that seems like a sensitive thing, like if your partner was like, wait, all of this was planned by AI and AI told you how to propose to me, that's like I don't know if I would personally like that. So yeah, we're kind of finding those boundaries now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm not allowed to use any AI for my vows coming up here. So that's pretty funny. But it's interesting, like this, it's an iterative process, right? Like you and I both had to go through those experiences to feel or to recognize, like, oh, maybe that's not the best use of this technology. We should maybe rethink this. And I think that's okay too, to give ourselves some grace and room for experimentation and self-discovery of, yeah, this is kind of where my boundary is for this task, or this is how I can use it.
Yeah, I definitely know of people whose boundaries are a bit more out there, but I don't need a judge. Well, I know we're coming up on time, so I just had a couple just questions to wrap things up, and we'll call it there. So we've talked a lot about business marketing AI, and you might have already touched on this, but I'm curious, what's one opinion you have about business or marketing or AI that you think people would disagree with?
Oh, I love this question. I think one thing that I think people will definitely disagree with is the fact that I don't think the future of AI is not generative AI. I really don't believe that that's the future. I think we've sort of experienced what we can do with this technology, but the next level of these capabilities will be small task or industry specific models. They're starting to be referred to as DALMs or DALMs, domain adapted language models. And I feel like that it makes so much more sense. It's more environmentally friendly. It's, more cost effective, and it's oftentimes way more accurate in terms of performance and doing certain things better, basically, because it's trained on very specific, like medical information or different sectors of travel, and it's able to support at a richer level than a general AI machine. I really sincerely hope we start to break a little bit away from this idea that AGI is the future and going to save us all when, I don't know. I don't believe that that's the path forward. I really don't. I think we're going to start to see a new wave of smaller models that do things better, basically.
Yeah. And does that apply? I mean, in my mind, it seems like it could apply to both B2B and B2C. Like you mentioned, hey, if I'm having issues with this medical bill, I have this AI tool that I can go to get help.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm excited about that future.
Me too. I'm really excited.
What's one impactful piece of advice that you've been given?
Ooh. Oh, I love that too. I think, so one piece of advice I was given semi-recently that has helped so much is don't divide your attention. Focusing on one thing yields increasing returns for each unit of effort. And it's so true. It's so true. Focusing is a superpower and really does yield, increasing results when you're able to do the things and prioritize the tasks that provide the most value. And that was something that was kind of ingrained in me at Hugging Face, and is, a big part of the culture there is prioritized by impact. Whatever it was we were working on in the different projects, it was just prioritized by impact, but yeah, not dividing your attention, and it's a mistake, I think, to focus too much on the content side of marketing and SEO and not on the distribution side. It's so important to come up with creative and interesting distribution strategies to experiment with, to test, to get it out into the world, because, you really can't build it and they will come when it comes to content online. You really do have to come up with a more savvy distribution strategy. And it's interesting, like back to like the focus thing too. I believe another kind of unpopular opinion that goes hand in hand with that is you need to be saying no to more things.
Yeah.
A lot of in the marketing world and SEO, there's a lot of shiny objects. There's lots of, new and interesting things always coming about, and your ability to stay focused, in my opinion, will create the the next kind of evolution of world-class marketers.
I love that. Yeah, the focus thing is something I'm always working on because there's so many things pulling me away.
Yeah.
I'm curious which direction you'll take this one. What's one book you'd recommend more people read?
Yeah. So this is a short one that I came across this year, and it just blew my brain apart because it's so obvious and like simple and straightforward. It's one of those brilliant reads where it's like, oh my gosh, why have I not thought about, like, this is so powerful. Why did I not read this 10 years ago? And it's Obviously Awesome by April Dunford. And it's about the power.
I love that book.
Oh my God. It's so simple. Like she breaks down positioning in such clear steps and has these case studies, like the Arm & Hammer case study of their positioning from, a baking product going into the cleaning market and how it revolutionized that business model. But we're as marketers, we do and support positioning, whether we like to know that or not. And having some of this knowledge, I think you're able to speak a little bit more to like the C-suite and business side of things and get really, really savvy in terms of what is our messaging here? How are we positioning our product against competitors and how to do that effectively?
Yeah, messaging and position was always very abstract to me.
Yeah.
And she made it extremely actionable. Yeah. And I'm like, I probably can't be a product marketer now, but I feel like I have some foundation to speak about this and how it impacts the work that I do.
Yeah.
So yeah, plus 100 to that recommendation.
I love it.
So where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah. So people can find me on LinkedIn. I'm trying to post more regularly on LinkedIn. I'm also, anyone can reach me at britneymuller@gmail.com. I am still on X, unfortunately. Those are probably the main places. And then obviously the course I'm teaching, Actionable AI for Marketers, people can catch me there.
Yeah, I saw that you also have Data Sci 101. Yes. That seems to be where you have another home base there. So we'll make sure to link to that as well.
Awesome. Thanks, David.
Awesome. Brittany, it was great to have you on the show. Thanks for making the time.
Thank you so much. This was a blast. I was excited to chat with you.